It all started March of 2019. I was furloughed from my job and staying home quarantined due to COVID-19 when I began to spend a lot of time outdoors. Well, one day, a hen flew into my family's backyard and she arrived to stay for good. Consequently, before we knew it, thanks to my neighbor's rooster, our backyard was full of baby chickens, now adult hens and roosters. At the time, we had no conditions for these animals in our yard, and we prepared makeshift habitats for them as best as we could. As you can imagine, caring for these birds quickly became my dad's new hobby, and my baby cousin's pastime whenever they occasionally visited.
Pito! Pito!
Okay, no es ni de aquí. ¿Qué pollo sacaste de aquí hoy? Mira.
Muy bien, Neda. Although these baby chicks were super adorable, I must admit I was not fond of the idea of having these animals as pets, because they pooped everywhere. Nonetheless, after having researched all the benefits associated with having backyard chickens, I have come to understand that they play a crucial role in not only providing a more sustainable way of life for my family, but also for the biodiversity around me. This project is of personal significance to me because I wanted to help my family rely less on grocery store-bought food and more on food produced in our own backyard. In other words, I wanted to save my family some money. Therefore, for this personal activism project, I decided to commit myself to not eating store-bought eggs anymore. Instead, I would be eating backyard eggs on a daily basis, or at least 3 days a week. In addition, I would create a DIY chicken coop for these birds. But that's not all. I would also commit to using the eggshells collected from my backyard chickens as fertilizer for the tomato garden I had planned to grow and the rest of the fruit trees in my yard. Not to mention that I would also collect the chicken manure from the coop to create a compost that would serve as a fertilizer that is less harmful and natural for my trees. Before I initiated this project, I had never eaten the brown eggs the chickens in my backyard produced, and I wanted to know if consuming backyard eggs had more nutritional benefits on one's health than eating white store-bought eggs. What I discovered through my research changed my perception of these tiny creatures. Did you know eggs from the store come from chickens that are caged in small spaces in factories and therefore could possibly yield eggs that have less nutrients in comparison to backyard eggs? This is because chickens raised in backyards are allowed to roam freely and are able to find their own food in the ground, hence why their diet is different. In addition, this explains why backyard eggs could contain higher levels of nutrients. Furthermore, I wanted to know how I could get the maximum amount of benefits out of having chickens in my backyard, and is why I decided to look into the possibility of using chicken manure as a fertilizer for the tomato garden I wanted to grow. I quickly Googled my inquiry and found a reliable source that provided me with all the required steps for creating a compost that would serve as a viable fertilizer. In addition, through my research, I also learned how to properly introduce eggshells into the soil to help plants grow. This can be done by placing the eggshells directly into the soil before planting a plant, or by mixing it in with compost, or by boiling the shells in water and making a tea that gets poured over the soil. Lastly, the research I conducted also provided me with the necessary guidance for creating a raised bed tomato garden. Essentially, the purpose of my project was to go from ignoring the chickens in my backyard to seeing them as a sustainable food resource for my family and I. The objective of my project was to cut or eliminate grocery store egg expenses by collecting eggs from my backyard hens each day and preparing eggs for breakfast for myself at least 3 days a week. I implemented this project with the help of my boyfriend and my dad. We broke down the work by weeks. On week 1, we took inventory of the materials and tools already in our possession. Most of the items we had were given to us or recycled, such as the wood we used, which was from old furniture and hurricane panels. Next, we measured the land where the foundations of the chicken coop would be established. On week 2, we opened 4 holes in the ground. We placed 1 wooden post in each hole. We added concrete mix in each hole to keep the wood erected firmly. On week 3, we precisely cut the wood. Then we drilled 4 posts on top of the chicken coop to hold the roof up. On week 4, we cleaned the metallic roof with soap and water before placing it over the wooden post. On week 5, we drilled the roof to the wood. Then we leveled the ground to set in place the pavers with concrete mix. Then while we waited for the concrete mix to dry, we had some fun. On week 6, we had a rainy weekend and were unable to proceed with the chicken coop. Therefore, we decided to use the night to plant pineapples and aloe plants instead. On week 7, we cut out the wooden boxes to collect eggs and drilled them into the wooden frame of the chicken coop. On week 8, we placed the siding on the chicken coop. On week 9, we hung the chicken coop entrance door and prepared the chicken's habitat using tree branches. On week 10, we moved the hens and roosters into their completed chicken coop for protection at night against raccoons and possums. On week 11, we started collecting and cooking brown eggs from the hens in my backyard. The results or impact of my project included going from eating no brown eggs to not only collecting them, but also eating them and saving my family money and living more sustainably. I believe I did meet one of my objectives, which was to consume backyard eggs, but I wouldn't go as far as to say I completely met all my objectives. One of the few limitations I faced was the rainy weather of Southwest Florida, which delayed significantly my progress on the chicken coop. Not to mention that this delay made it impossible for me to ever start growing my tomato garden. That being said, I did not have time to create my own compost. If I were to do this project again, I would most likely recommend building the chicken coop in the winter months because the weather is cooler and this permits for less delays in the action plan. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my dad and my boyfriend, and even my sister's boyfriend who stepped up and helped on the last day. Without their help, this would have not been possible. Now I'd like to open up this space for questions. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If not, the end. Thanks for watching again, and I hope you enjoyed this video.